Tonight we're talking about finances, and you know, one of the things that we've got a lot of information for you on this. There was the pre-class video. So for folks who have not, so for folks who weren't able to watch that, I highly recommend it. We're actually not going to do their activities, the conversations that they have in that booklet. So you have that, and you can actually watch the video and have the conversations, just like if you were in a group of people doing it. But in our manual, there's quite a bit of information that we're going to just allow that to be reading homework for you. So there's a lot in there about maybe questions that you have from a Christian perspective on money, on finances, on marriage in that way. So again, if you look over that, tonight's the last class, but if you look over that and you find that that you have questions or you'd like to talk to someone about it, both myself and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn for Donald and Michelle. They would be happy to sit down with you and talk about it. So, you guys with us?
Yes. We're trying to get our computer all booted up, so we're doing it off a cell phone because we're just that adaptable, evidently, tonight.
There we go.
So that's what's happening.
But if the computer starts to work, Kelly, we will switch it out.
Yes, that's fine. Can you guys turn your volume up just a little bit? I was going to say, I was going to turn mine up. Maybe I need to turn mine up, actually. Is everyone else hearing them okay? I think it's me. That's okay. That's good to know already.
Yeah, we can't turn the volume. We can talk louder, but we can't turn the volume up.
So you gotta lean in, Donald. We only see your ear. So everyone, this is Donald and Michelle Wells, and they are some of our most faithful leaders in the church, and especially in marriage and family, I would say. I met Michelle and Donald how many years ago? 6?
Almost 6. Yeah.
Next Friday will be 6.5 that you met us.
That's right.
6.5 that we met. Yes.
So
and our anniversary is next week. So
wow. So they were in your place that many years ago. They came to the classes, they met with me, they got coaches, and went through the program, and then asked me to do their wedding, which was delightful. So I get to be the person. And so then they became coaches pretty quick, because both Donald and Michelle had ministry experience. They had lots of life experience. And so since then, lots of life experience. So since then, they have been helping out with classes as well. So there's just, and advising me, I would even say. That's, you know, how diverse they are. So you're in for a treat. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit more, tell us more about you. But if at any time, if you want to, after that, if you want to switch out, I can start out the class if it's ready. So.
Okay. Intro. You want me to do intro?
I do.
Okay. So yeah, we're Donald and Michelle. We've been married, as Kelly said, it's almost 6 years. This is our second marriage. We have 3.
We were not married to each other before.
No.
This is our not our
for each
marriage.
Of you, it's a second marriage.
Separately second marriage. So we have you're on it already. We have a blended family. We have 3 grown adult children who are the ages get fuzzy after a while, 27, 27, and 25. And we actually have 2 grandchildren now. So we're in a whole new phase of life that we're starting to adjust to. And usually I don't talk about this, but I feel like it's kind of, it works with the financial thing. Donald is a CPA and runs an accounting firm. And I work in his office and I babysit,
She
basically.
manages me.
So that's kind of a little bit of background about who we are and what we do. And I don't know, we stay busy. We love this stuff. We're so excited about sharing a little bit of our story tonight. And yeah, and so we love teaching, and I'll tell you, oh my gosh, we just got a low battery warning on the phone. So now we're scrambling to find a plug. I'm so humored by this.
This is it. This is our life these days.
There's a longer one in that drawer over there if you want it. But so we love teaching and we love feedback. If you guys have questions, anything, interrupt us, right? Like I've heard people say, you know, I'm not your preacher, I'm not your pastor, interrupt. We would love that. So that's kind of who we are. You got
And
anything else?
yeah, the only other thing that I want to add before we get started is I am so excited that you guys are doing this. Get that back up. I believe that it truly has been one of the things that has allowed Michelle and I to be, I guess, successful to some degree, going through what you went through. We both had really long-term first marriages, and we didn't have language, and we didn't really know how to overcome hurdles. So they just became cycles, repeating cycles. We still have repeating cycles, but now we have language to talk through and how to deal with them a little bit better. So I will tell you that I think this is one of the best investments that you can make in your marriage today.
I agree.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Well, okay. How, let's see. I want to make sure no one else is waiting to come in. Let's see. I want to start with us asking how many people have heard that the biggest cause of divorce is finances? How many of you have heard that kind of thrown around? Yeah, so it is a hard part of marriage, but what we would say is that lack of communication or not being able to communicate about finances is the highest, causes the highest rate of divorce. So what we want to do tonight is bring some of that into perspective. So just like all the other classes we've done, you both have your individuals, you're unique, and you're going to have different ways of looking at spending, saving, thinking about managing money. Turn that phone off. There you go. Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about. I wonder if I can kick your phone in.
We're getting there. I apologize.
You know it. Well, there we go. Mute. I muted it, so that's good. Hi, Michelle. So let's see. I think I'm going to start with this, maybe a little fun thing. So I want you, we're going to do, remember how we did that turn to your partner and say, you're going to mess up, I'm going to mess up. Well, this is going to be just a little different. This is the beginning of a worksheet. And I want you to answer the question. Maybe, I don't know if you have anything to write on or just in your mind, answer the question quietly. So don't say it out loud. I have a budget. Agree or disagree? You know, it may be sometimes, but we're not going to do sometimes tonight. We're going to be, I have a budget. The next question, the next statement is my partner has a budget. And so take mental note of your answers. Now tell each other what you think.
Can we answer when you're ready?
I know. I know.
Wait, Marcus, are you talking to us? We can't hear you. Gotta unmute. Oh, no, okay. I think there are children involved here, aren't there? Very good. All right, so this, it may not be something to laugh about, but it might, and we're gonna let you talk about it a little bit more. It's really common for one person to have a different definition of a budget, for each person to have different definition of what a budget is. So, and I would say, the higher stakes kind of budget. Some people might think as long as they know where their money's going, they have a budget. Other folks might have, the envelope system. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where you only spend what you say you're going to spend and things like that. So when you think about a budget, what do you think a budget means? And in other words, if you say you have a budget, but your partner says you don't, do you understand where's that discrepancy? What does your partner think a budget is that you weren't thinking about? So how many feel like this might be a conversation they've already had? You've talked about it before. Okay. Maybe a little bit, yeah. Okay, so that's what we want to have happen tonight. We want you to be thinking about how you differ. And so I want to turn this over to you, Donald and Michelle, to go through. I kind of started us out there, but kind of go through the rest of the things we're going to talk about to begin with. So.
Well, Kelly, if you like, I like to start with the budget because Michelle and I it's been a really interesting process for us to go through the budgeting. So when we met, Michelle had no budget, had no idea why she would want a budget, and
So I manage my finances by opening my bank account app. And if there was money in there, then everything was good. And if there wasn't, then things were bad. End of story.
So she had no budget, but she had a really nice savings account and no debt. All right. So I had a budget, and this is where I want to talk to about the budget. I had no money saved and I had tons of debt. So I had a budget on a piece of paper, but I didn't use it. Like so what if I budgeted $200 for food and I needed some more food? I would just blow through it. I don't care. So having the budget on a piece of paper has been an interesting process. So what we've done since we've gotten married, and it took us probably a year and a half to get comfortable with this.
I don't know what time is it. Like
So
we're always still working on it.
And just so you guys know, since 4 o'clock today, we've been talking about our family finance.
Yeah.
So it's a constant, ongoing conversation. But what we did is that we got to the point where we have a budget. We have a budget on paper, and we also have a system where we compare what we actually do to the budget, so we know where we're at. And over time, we've talked about the different line items on the budget and how we need to, or how we can agree to move them around. So what I want to start off with the budget conversation is I really encourage you, first and foremost, to get something down on paper, truly get something down on paper. And then, yeah, I use this word, Michelle, clean it up for me, and then negotiate, then truly negotiate and figure out where you spend money. Like I spend more money on insurance than I think Michelle would ever dream that we would. So I feel that that insurance is important, so I give a little bit in maybe my my car, what kind of car I drive, because insurance is really important to me, and the amount we spend, I think, is appropriate. So we start to negotiate. We start with where we started with Ramsey's percentages, and then we kind of negotiate a little bit from there.
So I think one of the really important things to know, like Donald's a CPA, right? So our budget has line items, and then there are like side line items, and we talk about entertainment and disposable spending, and it gets broken down into 5 categories. And I get tired at about like category 3, right? Like I don't know. I'm not loving it. I have a much simpler point of view on it. And so, part of the negotiation for us in our marriage, because at first I'm like, that's overwhelming. When I have a receipt and I have to like figure out where it goes, that didn't work well for me, right? So one of the things we tried, Kelly mentioned it, it's kind of old school, but we did like the envelope method for a while, where we had cash that we walked around with that fit into the budget that worked for Donald, but I didn't have to worry about
What she was spending money on.
right. So, there was some negotiation there where I was like, I can't handle that. That's too much. I know how to spend money well. I don't, I'm not going to be frivolous. I'm not a big shopper, stuff like that. But it allowed us to really have a conversation and meet each other where we were, right? He felt comfortable, and there's like a safety security thing for him, and having the 57 line items on the budget
That I never paid attention to.
Right. That's a side issue, right? And I just felt comfortable knowing that if I wanted a Diet Coke from McDonald's, I didn't have to feel guilty about it, right? I could drive through and get it. And so the budget, I think you have to figure out what works for you. And it truly is more about getting on the same page about what your goals are, right? Like budgeting is truly about goals. Where are we headed with our finances and our money, right? And what are we trying to accomplish? Do we want to take a big vacation? Are we looking to buy a house? Are we saving money for college, right? Like there's all these things. And I think that, life moves fast. And so truly the budget is more about getting on the same page and understanding each other, what your goals are, and trying to make sure that you're both headed in the same direction.
Yeah. And as we go through tonight and talk about finances, just so you know, I am the spender.
That's the understatement of the world.
I am the person in the relationship that spends money to emotionally feel better. I used to every Friday, I will tell you guys this, right? Kelly, I don't even know if you know this. I used to every Friday leave work, never go to the bar. I went to JCPenney's and I would go through their sales rack, and whatever, if you find my Twitter handle, I've got a picture of a hat on. That was one of those Fridays at JCPenney's where I was trying to make myself feel better going into the weekend. Yeah, I'm a CPA and I do all, but I am the spender and the emotional part of the money.
I'm the person who at Kroger, after we do our weekly shopping, has to leave the register while we pay because I get like heart palpitations because everything costs so much money. Right. So the two of us together is like, it's just, we're very different as far as our finances go. And in sort of weird ways, right? Like Donald has the 57 line budget. He also loves to spend money, right? Like he will never give up an opportunity to buy something new. So it's just, we're very different, but we've figured out a way to make it work. And truly, the way it works now is not the way it worked when we first got married, and that it's changed 57 times. And it changes just because life changes, right? Like where we're headed now is not where we thought we were going to be headed 5 years ago. And that's why I feel like some of this is really just about building good skills and communication around money, because stuff's going to happen and things are going to come up and life is going to change. And so you need to be able to practice being really comfortable having the hard conversation. So budgeting, that's first thing. One of the other things, the pre-video talked about it, and it always strikes a nerve with me about how you feel about money. right? Like, I feel like, for me, since I was a kid, I was always anxiety ridden over money, right? I always thought there was never going to be enough. This is a funny story. So I was maybe 5 years old, 5, yeah. My parents went to buy a car. So we're at the car dealership, and for my family, this was a big deal, right? And I remember sitting in the back of this new to us car, it wasn't a new car, crying at 5 years old because I thought we were going to be poor because my parents didn't have the money to pay for the car, right? Like, I didn't know anything, but just this, money has always been a burden and been really heavy for me.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah. So I grew up without anything. I mean, I grew up without money. And I didn't know it until I got older. But my family, we've done the government assistance, we've done the food stamps, we've done all of that stuff. So you would think that I would feel a little bit more safety in money, but no, I don't, because I know it's a tool. My brother and I today are we make more than my parents. My father can't even wrap his head around how much money my brother and I make, and we do okay, but we're not crazy, right? And it's just what and so Michelle's like, I always want new things, and I work very hard to make sure that that things are good financially. So I'm not really anxious, or I don't feel guilty about spending. I look at money as an absolute tool, and that's the way that I feel about it. It's a tool to be used, and however that means. But what I think is most important is that that you can put some language around how you feel about money, and that you can share that language with your partner, and that everybody recognizes that, one person's not right and one person's not wrong, right? Because as you go forward, you're both going to have to deal with those emotions. You're both going to have to deal with whatever the other's feeling. So it can't be right or wrong. I mean, Kelly probably has said it before. Feelings are never right or wrong; they just are, and you just have to learn to understand each other's feelings, and especially like if the feeling starts to infringe on the relationship, you have to understand how to mitigate that and how to work through that.
Mhm.
So I would really encourage you, and I know that you guys talked about family of origins. I'd really encourage you to think through your family of origin and how the family of origin functioned with money, and how you are either liked or disliked. My brother and I have gone in the completely opposite direction of my mom and my dad regarding money. We ran from where they looked about or thought about money. So your family of origin, you either tend to melt into it or run away from it. So that's why I think your family of origin becomes very important to think through, and then how you respond.
And I think the other thing is sometimes it's really important to just acknowledge you have feelings during the conversation, right? Because sometimes you'll start the conversation and you're like, oh, why do I feel anxious or irritable? Or, I don't want anyone telling me these things or whatever. Like you guys talked about self-protective vows, and some of that can kind of play into it. They're all these pieces, but just being able to kind of settle in and go, man, that feels like a really strong feeling, or I don't want to have this conversation for whatever reason. I think sometimes it's really good just to acknowledge that there's a feeling behind it, and to realize, just like Donald said, I can't emphasize this enough, that your partner may not feel the same, and that's okay, right? So throughout our marriage, there have been different times where we've hit a tight spot, right? For whatever reason, finances have been tight. And so Donald would come to me and say, hey, I really think that we need to settle down our spending. Okay, so for him, thinking his money is a tool, his thought was Friday night, I'm not going to Penny's and looking at the clearance rack. And I'm hearing, if you need gas in your car, you better budget it well, otherwise you're gonna have to walk, right? Like it's just totally different thoughts. And it's taken me years to be able to understand that what he's saying may not be exactly what I'm hearing him say, and learning how to have that open communication. Because I think that most of the time when we've hit stumbling blocks with money, it's been about misunderstanding what the other person wants and what would make them feel better, safer, any of that kind of stuff. So lots of opportunity for good quality communication.
I have one more thing, and then I'm going to open it up for a quick question if anyone has it, and then we have a couple more other things to cover, right? So I was very blessed and fortunate that just yesterday I told Michelle about this, and Kelly, this was how God works. Just yesterday I had a speaking engagement, and afterwards there was a gentleman that came up to me, and he said, "Hey, I see you're married." I wear my wedding ring. That's important. But he said, "Hey, I see you're married. How do you, as a business owner and your wife, deal with finance?" Now, this is nothing that I wasn't talking about this at all. He just had it on his heart and he wanted to ask. And what I told him was that there's a couple things that are really hard that I will ask you to press into. The first thing is that our finances are a open book. Michelle has access to everything. Even at our office, she has access to everything. She has the freedom and the ability to question and ask about everything. I have the same. So that openness allows us to make sure that we each get the information we need. And as a guy who is the spender, probably carries much more debt in the relationship. Sometimes it's really hard to sit there and have her ask really good questions that the answer to is, yeah, you know what, I kind of just wanted it and I really didn't know why. So that's hard. So I really encourage you to just make sure that you guys figure out a way to have an open book regarding your financial picture so that everyone knows. It's really hard for two people going in the same direction when one person doesn't know where they're starting at.
Yeah, so that's a really good segue, right? So,
But I said I wanted to see if there's any questions.
oh, well, go ahead. I'll talk in a minute.
Are you segue? Can you hold your segue?
I can.
Okay. So we've talked a lot, and we've talked for 20 minutes now, and Michelle and I can talk forever. So every now and then we like to say, okay, are there any questions? Or if you don't want to ask your question, put them in the chat. I will monitor the chat as we go. To do it all the time when I do presentations. So just if there are any questions, we'll just pause for a second and catch our breath to see if anyone has anything.
Hi, Michelle and Donald. That was a really good overview of budgeting. My question is around what it looks like when you guys might not agree on someone's spending or how much someone has budgeted for something. So let's use JCPenney, for example, since that's your thing, Donald.
It's a cheap
So-
place, right?
Yeah, it's have you ever like not agreed with that, maybe because you don't understand it? And if so, like, how do you go about bringing that up? And then if so, like, Donald, how do you protect something that brings you happiness and like understand how to negotiate?
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
I think, first of all the pre-conversations before that are really important, right? Where are we headed? What are our goals, right? But at the end of the day, we're going to disagree sometimes about what should be purchased and not be purchased. So one of the really good guardrails that we have in our marriage is that we will not make a purchase above $100 without asking the other person, right? And that just that's really probably more about me than it is about Donald, right? I have money heaviness. So that's worked really well, right?
And we negotiated on that threshold because for me, as a really low threshold.
And for me, it's like $100, right? Like,
So, but everything's negotiation. And it really comes back to your relationship. And you guys have heard this or you've seen this question asked in your book, how can I make this situation better for you?
Mhm.
And you really want to, I don't want Michelle feeling anxious and Michelle doesn't want me unhappy. So it becomes, okay, how can we make this better? And at the end of the day, if we truly have each other's interests at heart, there is a middle ground. And one of the things that I tell our kids this all the time, best idea is not my idea and it's not her idea, it's our idea. And she and I really have pressed into that concept.
Mhm.
Is that, yeah, I'm over here, she's over here. It doesn't mean the middle is the best idea, right? That becomes easy, that makes life easy. But it's, okay, we really want the best for each other. And how do we make this better for both of us?
and I don't want to be too prescriptive, right?
Yeah.
I do believe that every couple should have a spending threshold where they need to talk to another person, right? Like, I can't
The other person.
do the other
is
person, yes.
The other person,
The other
not
person,
a.
not a random person, because man, Donald would find some people to endorse
I
him.
call my brother all the time.
However, because I don't want to go out and buy a car without him, there and us having a conversation, right? But there's no, like, you have to do it this way, right? We know couples who have separate checking accounts. I mean, everybody has access, right? I'm never in favor of not having your spouse know what's going on, but maybe like for a while we had disposable income, like cash we could carry around and spend however we wanted, right? You just have to do what works for you, and you guys kind of have to negotiate and say, oh no, that feels like too many boundaries, I want to be able to do this. And so there's always a way, right? I think that transparency is really important. I think that understanding that the way you have done things, that it's probably going to be changing a little bit, right? There's going to be some adjustment and learning your partner and figuring out what they need and what they're looking for. And truly, in so much of marriage, it's about being able to hear and listen without getting your feelings hurt, right? Like, so often hard conversations are hard for both people, right? The person who's saying, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, that's really hard. But it's also really hard to be the person who hears that's making me uncomfortable. And so realizing that sometimes it's messy and it's not going to go perfectly, but knowing that that person that you are doing life with has your best interest at heart, right? Just believing that and understanding that the conversation's important, even if it doesn't go perfectly. And however you decide to manage your finances today, if it doesn't work, you get to change it. You're not making a lifetime commitment to how you're going to do it in this moment.
So I'll add just two things to that, and then we'll see if anyone else has any other questions. First, and guys, I'm going to tell you, it's hard. You're not always right. You're just not. She has to listen to her. You have to listen to her a little bit. And I'm going to speak to whoever is the highest income earner in the couple. You have one vote. The other person has one vote. You can't throw that weight around, because in other places, I know that in our situation, if I threw that weight around, there'd be places like the bedroom that I'd be really upset if Michelle threw her weight around. So you can't throw weight around like that. And that creates, and that creates buffers and boundaries into you guys being the best you. So sometimes it's hard because it's really hard given how our finances are generated sometimes, for Michelle to come to say, I don't agree. I've even had Michelle come and say, I don't agree with hiring that person right now. And I'm like, you're not working there. But it's a real conversation, because hiring that person affects finance. So she has a say in it. Anything else?
Questions?
You got more material, we'll run through.
I know we will.
I
Well,
I have a question actually.
Yeah.
Kind of relates to what you were just talking about, I think, or kind of slightly before you were just talking about that. So my partner is really good at finding like exceptional deals. Like she can like cruise like Craigslist like nobody's business and find like a really good thing. And sometimes, she finds that deal and it's like, like do it now or it's gone. So I don't know if you have experience with couples who like have negotiated some kind of like, look, here's how we work this, like kind of in situations like that where one person has that skill and that ability and that knack for doing things, but it does require some level of like trust on that side. And, sometimes it's going to be high and sometimes it's going to be lower. Do you have any thoughts or like experience with that?
So a little bit. So one of the things that I believe is that in today's world, cell phones are awesome, right? And I will be. I'm fortunate that I get to go to a lot of fundraising events, and sometimes I will have the opportunity to buy a box at Ohio State for more than $100, and I've got to make the decision right now. Boxes for $300. I've got to make the decision right now. Hey, girl, it's got to be a phone call. Now, if she doesn't answer, now I have to worry about trust. Now I have to say, okay, have I built up enough trust to go ahead and do this? But as soon as it's done, there's a conversation. Here's how, here's what I tried, here's what, we okay, we not okay? Because if we're not okay, here's what I can always do. I can always sell it. I can always sell it. So I think you develop some rhythm if you got that where someone's has the opportunity to make some really good transactions at a quick notice. You develop a rhythm where, okay, let's make a phone call, leave a message, and then if we're still not comfortable, there's always a way. There's usually a way to unwind that trend.
That's actually super helpful because she's very good and always very ready. Alyssa put this in the chat, so like I don't feel bad saying it out loud. It's probably more a diss on me anyway. So she's very like confident and comfortable in those transactions. And I'm like, wait, do we have all the information? Like, have we done enough research? Is there something better out there that we're missing? And then we miss the deal. So it's kind of like that trust is going to be something that I have to work on my end because I know that she has that skill. It's just my hesitancy in that department.
Yep.
So
Yep.
That's actually really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly.
And I think that this is something you're going to build over time, right? Like I am a slow decision maker, right? Like, and especially when it comes to spending money, right? Like I am slow. And if in my slowness, the deal goes away, well, that's all right with me, right? Like, it's just, wasn't meant to be. So what I have had to learn is that sometimes decisions have to be made faster. And it's been a trust building thing, but I'll tell you, year one, no, $100, right? If it was 101 at the restaurant, well, you better make that phone call and just have a seat because we need to have a conversation. And so for us, it was truly about building trustworthiness and knowing that I was a partner in it, right? It really had very much less to do with actual money than knowing that he saw me as a partner and that we were in it 50-50. And, we're down the road a little bit, right? Like things have happened and occasionally that $100 threshold will be, forgotten. Bypassed, we'll use that word, but that's okay. I mean, we're learning. And as our finances grow and change, $100 may not be the right threshold, right? So we're still in the process of refining it. But I do think that for me, it was more about being seen as an equal partner. And it really was about that money piece and knowing that we were in it together.
Stephen, very specific to your question, what I would ask if I was coaching you, what I would ask you to do is to really start to work with your partner on the decision-making process so that you learn and you appreciate the process. Like the car Michelle's driving right now, she never saw until it was in our garage. I have a couple of friends that are in the automobile industry, and I call them up and say, hey, I'm looking for a car. They call me up and say, hey, Don, I got it. You want to come pick it up? It's this color. And they called one day, and Michelle gets migraine. So she was in the midst of a migraine. So I went to her and said, hey, Richie called. Are you good? And she said, I've met Richie. We've done 3 other transactions with Richie. I understand the process. Go do it. So it became a building of trust and understanding the process more than it was about the transaction.
And truthfully, I'll speak for that situation specifically. He came to me, I wasn't feeling good, right? But he came to me and he did ask. We didn't talk about numbers or anything. It was truly just about,
Are you okay if
are
I
you
go do
okay?
this?
And had he brought that same car home that I love so much without talking to me, I probably would have felt drastically different. And Stephen, just for you, if it makes you feel more comfortable, set aside an amount of money a month, right? Like, here's your Craigslist fund money where you can do whatever, right? Or something like that, right?
Mhm.
There's all sorts of different ideas that you can come up with just so you can get comfortable with it. But cell phones are great, right? It's really hard to say that you couldn't get a hold of me, right? There are very few times when it's just impossible to get a hold of someone.
What was that? We were watching a show this weekend, and a couple was arguing, and a spouse said, I called him and he didn't answer the phone. And his answer was, my phone was on 1%. And she was like, that 1% ain't from me.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey,
Very-
I wanna jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing in my mind as we're talking is tying together all the things we've talked about so far. And I'll be the pastor here and say, if you feel like there are differences, remember what we talked about last week about going to God first before you go to your partner. So it's one thing to have all these agreements, all these conversations. And what I'm hearing Donald and Michelle say is check yourself. What's going on in your heart? What are you aware of? What kind of anxiety is coming up in you? And is this something that your partner needs to carry? Or is it something that you can do with God? So, I've heard people say we want to have God involved in everything but our money and our sex, like that's the things. No, we don't touch that, God, but he does. And I know Donald and Michelle would say this too. He does want to be there in all of that with you. And so asking the question, Lord, why am I so anxious about this? Am I afraid? Maybe you have had someone else in the past that has not dealt with money well, and you paid the price for it. We don't want to have our new partner carry that burden, right? It doesn't mean that you're wrong for feeling the way that you do. It just means that it's not really good practice, and it doesn't help you to be one for you to hold the person you're with now to something someone else did in the past. I think Donald and Michelle can talk to that a little bit as well, but be remembering self-protective vows, family of origin, your relationship with God, and the way you learn to talk with him about what's coming up with you and in you before you talk to your spouse about it. Or maybe you start talking about it and you think, yeah, I really need to pray about this. I know my heart's not right here. Or maybe we wouldn't say that. It's not about being right or wrong, but.
Oh, I would say that happens a lot. Yeah, no, I think it's a process, right? And sometimes that you've hit a soft spot for you. And I do think that's the time to really press in and say, God, I need your guidance. So I'm not taking this out on the person that I love.
Yeah.
Kelly kind of alluded to it, but one of the points I think that's so important is that you have a real conversation about what your present money situation is, right? I know so many people get married and they don't know what their partner's financial situation is. And it's hard, right? Like it's a hard conversation. And I think when we had it, like he's this successful CPA, I was anticipating some sort of like Daddy Warbucks savings account and this amazing like financial outlook. And that wasn't exactly what happened, right? But it was, that's hard conversations, right? Sometimes what we think is really happening is maybe there's more to the story. So I think that being honest about your financial situation and your financial past, really important. And one of the lines they said in the pre-video that I love so much was, it's better to plan the future than argue about the past, right? We can't undo anything that's been done, right? But just being focused forward and why talking about those goals are so important.
Yeah. I agree.
Look at that. That's amazing. I love that. You know, one of the things they were talking about too, about sharing money. And, you know, I don't know, I feel like we live in a society so often where everybody's like, oh, that's mine, right? And one of the things about marriage is it really is about an hours situation.
So one of the things that Michelle and I have talked to couples about when they get married, and it's something that I think that, I don't know if Kelly said it to us or we found it or somebody else said it, but it's something that we had to come to grips with, that when you get married, you give the other person the right
To destroy you. That was Rick Nathan.
Okay,
actually.
Rich Nathan,
Yeah.
Rich Nathan, so a pastor. Kelly, you can't correct that. That's a pastor. You give the other person the right to destroy
The
you.
ability.
The ability, not the right, the ability to destroy you.
Well, and his
And-
exact quote, excuse me, Donald,
Yeah.
was, "You're not married unless the other person has the ability to destroy you."
So when you really come to grips with that, communication becomes much easier,
Mhm.
right? Because I need to know what she's thinking. I need to know what she's doing, and she needs to know what I'm thinking. So when you really wrap your head around that's what this marriage thing means, then the communication aspect really takes on a whole nother level.
I'm less afraid of having the conversation than you do about the consequences of not having the conversation. So, anybody have any other questions?
So Kelly, I think the next thing is this scenario. Do they have this or do we read this to them?
You'll read it. Couples
Okay.
don't have it.
Okay. So we've got a scenario.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to change. Okay, so here's the scenario that we have. A wife comes to a husband wanting to buy a new car. Husband does not want to discuss it and probably does not want to buy one. Tells his wife to do all the research and get all the numbers and come back, and then they will talk. The wife does her work, lots of it, brings it to her husband, and he says he doesn't want to talk about it right now. The wife gets upset and decides to go out and buy the car. After she has done it, she calls her husband to tell him what she has done. So that's the scenario. We're going to ask you guys to take a few seconds, a few minutes. What went wrong? What could have been done differently? And how would you have felt? So those are kind of your questions. What went wrong? What could have been done differently? And how would you have felt?
We'll give you a few minutes to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll kind of get back together for a second. I know it's, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but anybody have any strong feelings, reactions, how you would have felt, any of that kind of stuff that you want to share? No one
Nobody,
wants to
okay.
share.
So Michelle, from your perspective, what went wrong?
Okay, so as the wife in the scenario, you asked me to do something.
Mm-hmm,
You asked me to do the research.
mm-hmm,
I went way above and beyond, and you really didn't want to listen to me.
mm-hmm.
And so I felt unheard, and that it really didn't matter what I thought. And so I was just going to take it upon myself to make a decision.
Yeah, so as a husband behaving that way, which I would never do.
Of course you
I would
I don't know
never
why
do
were
that.
you thinking that?
Yeah, that's an awful scenario. As a husband making the decision, in essence, I just I want to use a real good adjective, but I won't use an adjective. And I say, I had made up my mind about the decision and just hoped that you wouldn't follow through. So I tried to, instead of have a difficult conversation with you, I just hope that you'd run yourself into the ground and get lost someplace and I not have to deal with it anymore. That's kind of wrong.
That's what went wrong.
That's what went
I
wrong.
feel like we need like music in the background, like some sort of dramatic music. That's
Yeah.
So what could have been done differently?
Well, I could have very upfront said, you know what, I don't feel comfortable with an auto decision, a car decision, instead of trying to get you to jump through hoops unnecessarily.
Mhm. And I could have continued to ask for you to enter that conversation with me so that I could understand why. And then we could, as we talked about, revert back to what our long-term goals were to figure out when it could possibly be a good idea for us.
In this scenario, is there any, in your opinion, I don't know the right answer to this.
Uh-oh.
In this scenario, is there any justification for going and making the purchase?
Without letting your spouse know?
Mhm.
No. No, there's no, he didn't listen to me. There's no, my car broke down. I'm riding a bike to work. No, that's how we work. That's my opinion. I think that
We're
decisions,
teaching. We're teaching. So
I know.
there you go.
maybe not next time, but for tonight, yeah, I don't think that you can go buy a car and just.
Well, let's not make it a car.
Yeah.
Let's make it a patio furniture, since that's something we're talking about right now, right? And I'm like, tell me what you want, tell me what you want, and then you go and you figure out what you want.
Mhm.
And I say, yeah,
So for me, there's no difference in starting a conversation and not coming to a consensus than not having the conversation at all. Right? Like, I feel like for us, that would still fit into that $100 boundary. If we're not agreeing and it's above that amount, no one just gets to decide. We still get one vote.
I mean, no matter how poorly you treat me in the process, I don't get to just decide.
Not today, sir.
You mean no matter how much I've done exactly what you asked me to do, and you just don't want to engage, I don't get to decide?
Nope.
Man, harsh. Called marriage.
There we go. That's marriage. That's marriage. And so one of the things, and we're going to do another scenario, but one of the things I just want to encourage you, when you have these conversations over smaller things, it builds a skill and a muscle set to be able to have the conversation about big things like cars, right? And so sometimes it's good to talk about, hey, how much money are we going to spend when we go to the movies this weekend?
Well, and one of the things that Michelle and I will do, like this type of scenario, when we coach couples, especially when things are going well in their relationship, we will ask them to do these scenarios. We'll ask them to play out scenarios so they can practice hearing each other speak and they can practice conversations. Because what we've found as we've gone through it and as we've coached couples, we all wait to practice until we're emotional.
Mhm.
and you don't execute very well when you're emotional. So what we want to do is we want to practice the conversation, practice. Like for me, it took a long time for me to get used to hearing certain things come out of my mouth, just hearing it. And that was a lot of practice, so that when I was emotional, I was used to it and it was easier. So really encourage you to practice those type of things with scenarios like this. And right over on our table, Michelle and I still keep a stack of conversation starter cards, like when we were dating, so that we just pull those things out. And every now and then, especially when things are going really well, we'll ask each other a really hard question just to practice.
Yeah.
Just a tool.
Yeah.
Just
So
a tool.
we're going to do another scenario, and this one, so it's not specifically about, or maybe it's an exercise. I'll say the word exercise. So let's talk about, I'll just read it to you, and then it'll give you guys the opportunity to talk to each other about some of this stuff. So it says, take turns telling each other what finances were like for you growing up in your family of origin. Include any self-protective vows you are aware that you made during childhood or adulthood. You may have already talked about this, but I think it's good to revisit it from time to time. What are some things you bring from your family of origin? So we'll just take a few minutes to think about how we were raised, our family's view of money, any self-protective vows that you have around money, and just an opportunity to share with each other. Okay?
So 5 minutes.
Yeah, we'll do 5 minutes. All right, so we're gonna just join back up here. Just curious if anybody heard anything
Anything new?
that you want to share, something you hadn't heard, or maybe something that you just realized yourself about you and your family of origin? Anybody want to share anything? They just love to hear us talk.
That must be. So Michelle, you grew up in a family where, well, tell us about how your family was.
Not very good. One more opportunity. Anybody want to share? Because I really, I would love to hear. Okay.
I can
So-
share if you want.
I would love that. Yes.
Just to like kind of throw some stuff in there. I know I feel like we've been talking a lot today too, but yeah, so what Stefan and I were talking about was, on my side, my family was like super tight with money. Like my dad made most of the decisions, or makes most of the decisions. Like my mom, I don't think has, they would probably say that they have kind of an equal partnership there, but I think that really it's that my dad makes the decisions and my mom like does the admin work in some sense. Like she worked part-time, he worked full-time, etc. And my mom will feel guilty to this day if she spends like $1.20 at Wendy's, you know, or something. So that kind of like trickles down to the family. So I think I kind of follow along that in some ways, but not in others. But it's definitely like a trend that happens in our family that we have to watch really carefully, which is like feeling guilty about spending something that you shouldn't feel guilty about it.
But that's why you're so good at Craigslist.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably why I'm like so obsessed with like points, like credit card points and like all that stuff, you know, 'cause it's like a way to beat the system.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good.
That is good.
That's good. And it's great that you know that, and that now you get to kind of have a little bit of power over that and make your own decisions about how you want to be, right? Because that's the first step in knowing, okay, how am I subconsciously, and then do I want to change that or do I not? And then you get to make that decision.
Anybody else want to share?
I don't mind sharing. My dad growing up was super frugal, like would literally drive his car until like it's gonna break down. Like he just loved to be super frugal and would like praise me if I was like saving money. And I feel like I would consider myself like an emotional saver, like that idea of like financial independence and saving money. I don't think I feel guilty about spending money all the time, but I'm like, oh my gosh, we just have to save and save and save. I don't know what we're saving for, but just like that idea of like having money. And so I've noticed it a lot, like in my relationship with Derek, because I'm just like always aware of like where are areas we can cut back. Like, I don't know. I just am like an emotional saver, I think. And Derek is not. He's like, it's okay. Like we can go out to dinner. Like this is something we can spend money on. So yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that, Sarah, and thank you very much. There's some really good things about that, right? But it all becomes a balance. And I would say that closely aligns with Michelle.
I've never heard that term, but I will use it from now on. Emotional
Well,
saver.
I was thinking of it when Donald said emotional spender earlier, and I was like, I'm like an emotional saver. Like I just emotionally need to save as much money as possible.
Like whenever our kids see Michelle in a new outfit, they know immediately that I bought it because they know that there's no way she would go and buy anything.
That's so hurtful. It's so true. Yeah. And and I would like have a dollar amount. I'm like $5,000 in the bank, and then I'll feel fine. Well, then the 5,000 went there, and I was like, oh no, $7,000, and then it'll be okay. It just never ends.
So I'll tell you a very funny story about an emotional saver, and it's actually a board meeting I'm going to. So we're talking about really big numbers. So forgive me for really big numbers, but it's a really big business, and I'm going to the meeting tomorrow. So I've been on this board for about 3 years, and they've got a lot of cash. They've got a lot of cash, millions and millions of dollars of cash. And when I was on the board, at first it was like, when we have $5 million in cash, we'll be good and I'll be free to spend. Well, we crossed 5, and then it was like, I think 7 is the right number. And then we crossed 7, and then it's like 10. Once we have $10 million of cash, I'll pay off that $20,000 debt that I have, but I need to get $10,000 of cash, $10 million of cash first. And we cross that. And now it's like, what's the next number? I mean, how much is, and then those are just, and I'm on this board. So Sarah, we're having this conversation, right, in the board meeting. Like, okay, what is the right number? And those are just great things to know and to just continue to dialogue about, because I wish I had a little more emotions regarding saving, but savings savings to me is like, why? I'm gonna die one day. Why save?
But for everybody who shared, I just think it's so important that as you move on in life, you're probably always going to have that inclination a little bit. And so just being really aware of that will help. Number one, you have a softer heart toward the conversation, and just knowing who you are, and that maybe there's more to it.
Yeah.
So anybody else want to share good stuff? Really good stuff. No.
Okay. Any questions about anything we talked about? Because I think we're getting ready to turn it over to Michelle, to Kelly, right?
Wait, Desiree and Daniel are going to share.
That is like calling somebody out. Okay, I'm ready.
They were. I saw them go off mute. Yeah. I saw you go off mute, Desiree.
No. So we are very different in how we view money. I enjoy my money, and would choose to do things that align with enjoying my money. And
I like that.
so Donald,
I like
everything you said, I'm like, yes, because in thinking about my upbringing, it was like, oh, all of these things I didn't have, or these opportunities I didn't have, or even once I was thrust into, university with a private school and all of these people who grew up very differently than I did. And now I'm like, okay, well, we made it. So
time to go get mine.
And Daniel has a very different approach, and like maybe like hoarding money.
Okay, so maybe I think with that said, I'll at least add a little bit more. So it's hoarding. No, so I grew up, we really didn't have very much money. My mom worked like in a cafeteria at a hospital. But later, as the years progressed, I had different experiences in life, and I'm not saying like monetary experiences, but I mean just generally just different perspectives on a lot of things.
Mhm.
And you could say I went to school for a long time. Let's just say it like that. And then so in my career, I think a lot about long term, and I think a lot about goals. Even some of the people I have worked with, or even you can say people who had mentored over the years, I see how they have kind of chosen to live. And although some of them are doing probably reasonably well, they might still be driving, a 2015 Honda or something.
Mhm.
But they would rather feel like I can do whatever I need to do whenever I need to do it,
Mhm.
not have to worry about anything. That's not to say they won't go to like Orlando or go to like San Diego once a year, but I just may not go 5 times a year. But
Jesus will provide.
yeah, okay. So I just look at it like, kind of thinking about the long term a lot. And so that really frames like the way I tend to spend, and also the way I tend to save. And like you made that analogy about the board and saving money and all that. I would say unless you're doing it for credit, for instance, once you pass the $1 million threshold, why do you have any debt? That's the way I would think about it. I'm like,
Well,
That's what the board is always arguing about, and there's a lot behind that. But then you and I could talk about that forever. But I love what you're saying, and that is that you're thinking long term, right? And that's where that conversation between you and Desiree becomes very important. What is our long? What is our plan? And then how do we become happy today as we're moving to that?
Mhm.
Right? So as long as you got, because I don't think Michelle and I would tell either of you that you totally are wrong, or that anything you're saying is wrong. That's not what we're saying. But what I'm asking for, and what we would ask, I think, of you, is to figure out, okay, where are we going, and what is our happiness? And Desiree, what was your happiness? And Daniel, what was your long term? Well, now they have to come together, and you guys have to come to a decision on that. So Daniel, you may end up going to Orlando twice a year. Desiree, while you're there, maybe you don't go to Orlando, you maybe go to Miami twice a year, you stay in the Fontainebleau. All right. And then that becomes but that's the conversation where you guys now are going to start to set your own direction together instead of separate.
and so much of it, I really believe you may not know right today, like what's going to work or how it's going to work. And so you try something.
Mhm.
Right. And then it may not work exactly how it makes both of you comfortable. And so then you can try something else. I think that where Donald and I are today looks vastly different, like I said, than it did year one. Year one, there was a lot of angst about money on both of our parts, right? And so now we continue to have the conversation, right? It is a continual conversation about where things stand, about things we want to do, right? Like, we want to go to the show, we want to take this vacation. These are things we want to enjoy our lives, right? Like I am more aware now that having money in the bank isn't all that much fun, right? There are things sometimes that you want to do. But we're learning and we're figuring it out. And so, you know, for you guys, like I said, just knowing this piece of information, right? It's like it builds your toolbox to know I feel this way about money, right? I want to go out and be able to spend, I work hard, right? Well, maybe if that makes my partner uncomfortable, then I need to figure out how to balance that. Or I want to have X number of dollars in the bank and know that I could do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. Well, maybe they just want to do some of that, right? Like it's a constant, it's a balancing act, and everybody's kind of got to negotiate it in a way that works for them.
And there's never enough of it. Let's everyone agree to that, right? There's never enough of it to make you completely comfortable or you completely happy. So what we all should be doing is, as Kelly started out, we need to make sure we pray not only over our finances, but over those emotions that we're using our finances to help us feel. So
money doesn't fill what only God can fill.
Oh, girl, I hear you. Huh.
Amen. You know, Michelle said something about trying things and seeing how they go. And then if it doesn't work, go on to the next thing. I just really want to say that perspective is really good to like practice in all areas of your relationship. So, you know, that all do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If your partner makes a mistake, if they think something's going to work and it doesn't, be kind. Like, be kind to them as you would want them to be kind to you. If you wanted to try something and it didn't work out, maybe it cost you some money. Maybe with a decision that you decided to do, you lost $500. That's really difficult. I like to tell this quick story. Once I do the finances, and this was probably 20 years ago, I forgot to pay our car insurance. And I don't know if you all know what happens when you do that. You lose your good priced car insurance and you have to start brand new as if you've never had car insurance. And I think it was 2 or 3 years we had to pay like double what we would normally have to pay. And I was so afraid to tell my husband that I had done that. Well, I was so mad at myself, of course, but I mean, he was as kind as could be. I mean, it was like oil off his back. He never thought about it again, even though it meant that our budget was, you know, like all wonky for well, we got used to it, of course. But the idea is that I don't know that I would have been as kind as to him if he had done it as he was to me. And now over the years, we've got 29 years. I can anytime I get upset about something, I can think of all the times he has been so kind to me, and he and comforts me even, you know, like just whatever, he has that ability to do that. So that's something to think about in any area of your marriage where you're trying new things. You want to treat one another with compassion, and then also with just say, like, I think it was Michelle or Donald that said, you know, let's not stay there in the past. Let's look to the future. I have never forgotten again. That was before there was automatic payments too. I try and do that as much as possible. But so you guys all have a lot to go on here. And again, I would say that if you find yourself in a tremendous amount of anxiety or fear over what's going to happen, really try talking to one another. And if that doesn't help, try talking to someone else. Be willing to open up and say, maybe I don't know the whole answer here. Maybe there's something that we could do that would be different about it. Okay. Well, we're going to talk, I want to just go over the homework a little bit. If you have your participants guide up or in front of you, Oops, that's the wrong one. There we go. There, let's just start. Maybe if you don't have it there, you can make a note, but the reading homework is on pages 101, 2, 3. Yeah, like 4. So, and then there's a notes page. So through 105, there's quite a bit of really important information there. One thing that I wanted to highlight, and that I think Donald referred to the person as Ramsey. You must know him really well. Calls him by his last name. I think what he's referring to, has anyone ever heard of Financial Peace University? It's Dave Ramsey. Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
Everybody knows him by Ramsey, Kelly.
You're so funny.
That's like Julia Pickerel used the word mitigated in a meeting yesterday, and I was like, wait, I have to look that up. I don't know. I mean, I've heard it used. I know it has to do with law, but all of a sudden I was lost in my head. So Ramsey is Financial Peace University, and there are classes offered probably all over the city. You can go online and find out where they're offering classes. I think they do online classes as well through Financial Peace, but you can go to it as a couple and say, get the idea of what you want your money to look like, what's important to you. Or maybe you have a lot of debt and you want to get out, and they might have some great ideas for you on how to do that. As we said, it's really something that you get to do together. And so the other thing that this information, this reading information touches on, that I think is more and more important, is how you are going to share your money. So I just want to say, in general, I believe that the best way, and I think that what we've come to decide at Vineyard Columbus, is the best way is for couples to at least have one account that's together, that all the bills are paid out of. And there are reasons why couples think they don't want to combine their money. But what we want you to think about is what all the good reasons are. Like how would it help us to combine our money? And you'll read about some of that in there. But when you know how much each other makes, and you know how much money is left over at the end of the month, then you can plan your goals. Or you can say, we are spending way too much on, fill in the blank, car payment, car insurance, groceries. In my house, when we were talking about, Michelle said she was having heart palpitations. My husband does the grocery shopping now. I am not comfortable with that, you all. It's just, and every time I see the money come out of the bank account, and I'm like, what? And I get so anxious about it. And so I question him. What? How did you, like $5 for, and it's just so silly. But about a week or two ago, I said, I think we're spending this much on groceries every week. And so he went and did a spreadsheet, and he showed it to me, and it wasn't even close to what I was like, all of my fear, was building up to. So we have to, that's after 29 years too, you guys. You would think we would know by now, but it really is something to think about, that you both know what's going on and can see. So movement towards shared finances at the bottom of 103 says, marry your money, the hybrid approach, keep money separate. The old way was you have one bank account for all of your bills, and then you each have your own individual checking accounts that you can deposit money into for your spending, so that you're not taking money out of the account that's going to pay the rent or the medical bills or whatever it is. And so that's just an idea. That's something for you to think about. But we really do want you to read this if you don't already have your perfect plan made up. Okay, yes. So next steps are Financial Peace University, or meet with a financial planner or coach, or with your marriage coaches, a counselor. You know, they're just different things to do. The idea is always that if you can't agree, the two of you two intelligent, mature, growing, understanding, kind people can't agree, then you can talk to somebody that can help you to find a way. So, amen. I've got just a little bit of time left.
Hey, Kelly,
Oh, yes.
Kelly, before you go, just a piece of advice, because we're seeing it quite often. And this is technical advice, so forgive me for this. But as you get married, you will want to go back to your employers and redo your W-4.
Listen at you.
Okay? Because if you don't, your withholdings will be wrong and you'll owe the IRS, because now you're a dual income household. So you will want to go back to your employers and redo your W-4. Your employer will never tell you this, and then you'll be mad at the end of the year when you're writing a $3,000 check to the IRS. So just tuck that away.
From Uncle Donald, CPA. That's great. Yeah, I remember trying to change my last name. I couldn't.
No,
remember.
Kelly,
Yeah.
Kelly, I got to tell you, because we were looking at ours, and so we've been on and off payroll for a lot of different reasons, but we were on payroll in 2022, and Michelle got her W-2, and I was like, what happened? She didn't fix her W-4.
Yeah, it happens. So anyway, moving on. Kelly, what do you got?
Moving on. Amen. Okay, so there is a worksheet on page 111 that I've explained how to do worksheets several times, but you remember, you do the first part individually, then you come together and talk about it. Or you can, if you feel really comfortable in all this, you can skip to the questions to be done together, which are on page 114. What about my spending habits and the way that I stay within our budget plan do you appreciate? Give one or two examples that are measurable. Let's all say it together. No, we don't have to do that. Measurable, reasonable, and repeatable. And I want you to think about all that Donald and Michelle just talked about and these three words. They're measurable, reasonable, and repeatable. You want to give each other the absolute best opportunity to succeed in what you decide to do. So if I ask my husband what makes him uncomfortable about my spending habits, and he needs to be able to give me these things that I could do to make him feel better about it. What would you like to be done about this? So I'm sorry, those were the agreement questions, but the improvement question is, what changes do you feel that I need to make in order to stay within our budget plan? Again, how can I make it better? Give one or two examples. So just be able to talk about that in a way where you're thinking, this would make it better for me. Let's talk together about how we can go about that. And I think that really is what Donald and Michelle were doing. This is just a worksheet for you to follow. Okay. There you go. You've got homework reading, and you've got a couple of worksheets in there that you can talk about. I wanted to take just a moment, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, to talk about the second half of the pre-class video, which was from Alpha Us, and it talked about extended family. And we really haven't, and what your parents' roles will be in your lives after marriage. So what I want to start out with is to say that we've got a diverse group here. We might have some people that are coming kind of out from under their parents' wings, others who have been out from under for a long time. others who maybe don't have parents. And so, let's just think about that. This doesn't apply to everyone, but the one thing that we can agree on, I think, is that our marriage has to become the priority for each of us. So we're going to talk specifically about families. So either your parents or extended family in some way, maybe siblings, aunts and uncles. You all have different experiences, but when you think about that, your marriage becoming priority, it can even extend into friendships. This can be your friends. And I think we mentioned once in this class about friends of the opposite sex. We want to be really careful there because it can get really hard on your marriage if you don't agree on that. Okay. So we are not saying it's black and white, good or bad. I just want to say that one of the it's not finances at our church that we hear about that break up marriages. It is emotional affairs. So one person says, I don't feel comfortable with this person that you're spending time with. It's hard for me. It makes me afraid. I think he or she wants more, whatever it is. And you say, it's nothing. It's not important. There's nothing wrong. I shouldn't have to stop spending time with that person. That's a scenario I want you to keep in mind as we then go into our families of origin and marriage, because you may have the best family there ever was. They love you both. They're for you. They support you. Or you may have a family that really wants a lot from you. One couple that were coaches for us for a while, and they helped teach at the time. They talked about her family wanted to talk to her. She talked to her mom and her sister every day for an hour on the phone. Now, you can tell by my voice, I think that's a lot. I can't imagine talking to anyone for an hour on the phone every day, but that's how they always have been. And so after they got married, he started to feel this whole other life that she had that he was not a part of. And so he didn't want her to give her family up entirely. He just wanted there to be a little bit less influence in their lives from her family, or at least to have their relationship together be the main influence. And so they had to do the difficult work of asking her family to kind of cut that back. To maybe, I don't really remember what they did, but he was happy with it, whatever it was, I'll tell you that. So when you think about this with your extended family, the thing to think about is that it's going to be different, and that we want for you to be able to enter this change in the same way I just talked about with your finances, to be kind. So in other words, if you feel that your partner's mother, father, sisters, whatever it is, have too much a say, a voice in their life, or take too much of their time, or demand too much, getting angry at your spouse's family is not going to be the way to go. Or getting angry at your spouse because they won't make boundaries with their family. What you want to do is begin to talk about how it can be done. And like we said with finances, you want to move in that direction of what you want it to be. Now, we talked about anxiousness and how to become less anxious. When it comes to setting boundaries with your family, again, that it takes time. And so if you are going to, let's just say vacations. Well, I wanted to look at this. I bring this up real quick. There, you might remember, or maybe not, the things they asked you to discuss as a couple. Possible areas of tension you can foresee with your parents or your in-laws. So they had vacations was the first thing. If your family loves to have family vacations where you all go away to a big Airbnb, and everybody loves it. But you're marrying someone now who says, I can do 2 days, but not a whole week. How are you going to do that? You know, how are you going to both meet each other in the middle? You know, there's that closeness and that independence. How are you going to meet each other in the middle? Christmas and other holidays. I have heard more and more over the years, couples saying, we just started out not joining our parents on that holiday because they want to have their own family, but then do it on another day, or take turns. You know, there's all sorts of things that folks do, but talking about it ahead of time might make it really easy. I'll tell you, my husband and I both had small families. We combined from almost the very beginning. Our families got together with us. That pretty much fixed any trouble there. But the value placed on togetherness, on closeness or separateness is something that you now you know about. It exists in all areas of life. And so you get to do that. Finances is the next thing. You know, if you have always gone to your parent for financial advice, or I would love to ask for a show of hands, but I won't. Your parents offer you advice at every turn. They have something to say. They have some comment to make. I got one, Derek? Yeah, they know what you need to do. I had one of those too. And so it's just really good to be able to be thinking about what kind of language you can use to invite them into a different way to talk about finances, or even to be able to say, you know, mom or dad, we're really okay. Thank you. We know that you love us, but we're really okay. We're going to take care of this. And again, it's going to take some time. There might be some hurt feelings, but we really believe that you can do it. So a few other things, interference. There's interference, but there also may be you going to your, oh yeah, it was Cindy and Doug last week. His mom would go to her mom's house and tell her everything that was wrong with her husband. You may not have that extreme of a circumstance, but you may feel tempted to talk to your sister, your sister-in-law, your mother, your father, whatever, about your spouse. And that would be, I would say that's across the board. Unless you have something good to say, don't say anything at all. Anyone know what Disney movie that came from? I'm going to date myself. Nobody's even, it was Bambi. Anyway, thumpers. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. So that was embarrassing. Anyway, frequency of visits, length of phone calls, changed loyalty. You know, if there, for some reason, your parents or there's a estrangement in your family in any way, that may be really difficult to navigate. And you have this ability, what we hope that you will create is this ability to be able to be there for one another, to listen. Remember the self-protective vows exercise. You listen, you listen, you listen. Then you ask, what I heard you say I want to make sure I heard you, what's going on? Is this what it was? Or like my sweet husband, you know, no, I don't know how you feel, but you're doing great. Just keep going. That, you know, help each other to keep talking and to keep knowing what it is that is in the other person's heart. So opinions and black and white thinking, that's wrong. They shouldn't do that. Those things are less helpful than hearing your partner out. Also, criticizing your partner's family can be really hard. I had the experience where my husband had a lot of really uncomfortable, just a really uncomfortable relationship with his mom. And so he would start kind of bashing his mom. And in the beginning, I don't know if I understood the rules or whatever, but I would start in. Didn't go over well at all. But you know what he was? He was kind even then. And he would say, hun, we need to stop because now it's starting to hurt me. We're talking about my family. And I think I was offended or embarrassed when he first did it, but then I started to see how much I appreciated that was his perspective. So any thoughts or questions? Because we have 10 minutes left. I've got a couple more things, but anybody want to ask a question about your family of origin or share anything? Remember, we are not blaming when we do this. This is not meant to throw people under the bus or to we're saying, I have this concern and I want to do it the best I can. And so how can I do it? When you talk to someone about that, I always say that every one of us, if you're not parents yet, you will be parents one day and your children will need therapy. I'm sorry, probably not you, but mine, So we're not trying to make, like a war against folks or anything like that. It's just, we want to know how to do this best. Anybody? Going. Okay.
Hey, sorry, I have a question.
Yes, Steph.
Sorry. So if I guess my Alyssa and I have families from different perspectives, and we're both interested in having kids. And one of the things that we've kind of been talking about on and off is how you respectfully have a conversation with both sides of your families to set kind of boundaries so that one side isn't alienating the kids from the other side or causing stress about one thing or the other with the kids. How do you start that conversation with both sides of your family? Like, look, I don't know where to begin. So.
Well, I would say it depends on how sure you are that that's going to happen. I might wait and see.
Absolutely sure.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it happens now, just with the change in like our life status. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's going to be one of those, you have to be together on it before you bring it to them. So you have to make sure that you've agreed what your perspective is, what your plans are, how you're going to do it. And then I would also say, depending on your makeup in this way, whether Stefan should talk to his family and you should talk to yours, or whether you talk to them together, because they're going to feel some way about it, right? And you want to be able to allow them to express themselves and not have them blame the other person this is what I'm thinking. Like, let's say you're talking to your parents, Alyssa, and they get mad at Stefan because they think he made you say that. I mean, you just want to take that into consideration. And you could say, no, Mom and Dad, this is us. We are on the same page. That unity, that unified force at the beginning for you two is the most important thing to work out. Once you're there, then you want to agree on how to tell your parents, how to say, we really feel like we're going to need to have boundaries and we'll try them out. Let's say to them, we're going to try these on and see how it works. If they really are overstepping, if they're demanding or, threatening, cutoff or something like that, that's where I would say you need to bring somebody else in. Or you may need to let's say, we're sorry you feel this way. We're really ready to talk whenever you want to. We're open.
Kelly?
Yeah.
Even if you go to one side of the family as a couple, would you agree with whoever is from that family of origin needs to own that conversation?
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
because much like Kelly, much like we talk about with step parenting, right?
Yeah.
That person's that's not from that family of origin probably shouldn't be trying to set rules within a family.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so one of the things Donald's talking about is that when there are children involved, the best thing you can do is let them see you loving their parent, not make the rules and try and enforce them. So if we take that idea and bring it over to parents, it is you want them to see you loving their child, how supportive you are, how loving you are, and that you're agreeing. And then that's the way it can happen. If you can't control your temper towards your in-laws, I would say maybe it's a good idea not to be there. Do your work. I mean, definitely do the work on that anger or that, frustration or that injustice, do the work on that, but you may not need to be there. Is that helpful? So you know what, you guys, I don't want to keep you over, and I have two things that I want us to do. One is I want to mention that we have a step family simulcast coming up, and I have it right here. It is for blended families or step families, and it's going to be a there we go. Saturday, April 29th. So Saturday from 9 to 3:30. And there'll be lunch and that kind of thing. So if you have children from a previous relationship, in other words, not yours together, then this might be something you want to come to, that you'd like to attend. There's going to be lots talked about, and I think there will be couples there to pray with you and talk to you. So I'm just saying that because we will probably be, if you mark that you have children, we'll probably be sending you that registration information as soon as it's up. But you can also email Mindy and she will send out whatever, you need for that. So that's one thing. The other is that this afternoon, you should have gotten an email from Mindy with a survey on it. So it is one of the best ways that we get feedback about these classes, and to find out what things were the most helpful, what things you'd like to see that you didn't, what would you like to have more of? Would you have preferred in person versus online? That one's usually pretty much down the middle, but we still want to hear your perspective. So I would like you just to see if you could pull that up on your phone right now and start it for me. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. That's about all we have left. And then we will be done. So see if you can find that, get it started.
Kelly, I got a question. What was the date of the simulcast?
Oh, I think it was April 29th.
Thank you.
Saturday. Yeah. It's going to be good stuff. All right, so I know you can't finish it, but hopefully starting it will find its way to finishing it. We know emails often get overlooked, and so I appreciate you starting that. And these are individually, not together. So we want to know your individual opinions because you are individuals. So as we've said so many times, there is a premarital program at the church that's available to you. So we have these classes, we have pastoral counseling, we have coaches, we have a chapel for weddings. Any or all of those things that you are interested in, just let us know. And we would be happy to come alongside you in that. So, Donald and Michelle, would you pray for us? And then I'll just sign off. Can you hear me? Can you pray for us?
Did you ask us to do that? I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. Oh my
That's
gosh.
okay.
I'm like,
No,
They're
we
all
won't
waiting.
pray.
Stop
You
it.
were,
Yes,
I
we
asked
will.
you and you were
Absolutely.
smiling and nodding and I.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
No, we'll both pray.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Dearly Father, we are first and foremost blessed that you will afford us the opportunity to pour into just wonderful lives and future couples and individuals, Lord, that are of your making. Lord, as always, when I pray for couples, I pray that anything that we said that was not for you does not find fertile ground and is cast away. And Lord, that the things that are of you just find softened hearts and continue to be matured and grow. Lord, I ask for a covering over these couples. I ask for between them, a softening of heart so that what we call difficult conversations, Lord, just become conversations for them. We ask that they grow as one, Lord, and that the cord just becomes wonderfully tight and wonderfully comfortable, and that that nothing can separate. Lord, again, we are blessed that they have started this journey, one that I believe is extremely fruitful. And I just ask, Lord, that where additional time and resources are of benefit, that you continue to provide a pathway for them to seek your faith in their relationship.
God, just praying for just excitement and joy and man, just a sweet spot that couples want to do marriage. And God, we know that you love marriage, and we just pray for just a spirit of excitement and peace and contentment. God, we know that life is long, and yet you have a way of redeeming all of our past and helping our future look more like you want it to look. God, we just pray that these couples, as they grow closer together, they're also just growing closer to you. We know that you have plans for each of them, and we just pray just for mercy and grace on their lives. God, just be with them and allow each of them to continue to hear your voice about all these things they've learned these weeks. God, just bless them. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, everyone. It's been great being with all of you. It's been such a great class. And so I'll just say goodbye. And we'll be on here for a little bit if you want to talk.
And thank you all for your grace with our
Technical issues.
as we got started tonight. Thank you for that.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
See you soon.